ability to use critical thought. How? Well, the combining of micro and macro level thinking will help you put relationships between individuals and institutions and even different societies into perspective. Want an example? Okay.
How does the relationship between the U.S. factory worker and Latin American economies affect this worker's relationship with his child?
Young Billy wants to attend an expensive private university. But how can a factory worker afford this expense when a Bolivian factory worker has his job?
A sociological imagination is used to grasp humongous complex concepts like that one.
You've now had your first taste of sociology. Sociology is one of several social sciences. Social scientists study humans and the social worlds which they create. Specifically, sociology is the science of human behavior as shaped by group life. Sociology offers systematic ways of understanding people's interactions. Simply put, sociology is the systematic study of human social relations.
We also said that societies are groups of people that share the same culture. And culture is a way of life of a people. Culture consists of the values the members of a group hold, the norms they follow, and the material goods they create.
Interactions between people are part of social structures. Social structures are the patterns of behaviors and interrelations between the people of a society.
In order to give you a better idea of the subjects that sociology encompasses, we gave you a rather important term: globalization. Globalization is the word used to describe the increasing interdependence of people around the world.
And be sure to remember that there are two levels of sociology, the micro level and the macro level. And recall that institutions are major areas of social activity that have sets of rules which govern a particular area of society. Examples of institutions include family, the workplace, political systems, religion, and educational spheres.
Lastly, we unearthed the concept of the sociological imagination. Sociological imagination asserts, critical thought involves pondering any situation. Critical thinking requires that you leave any and all biases at the door when you ponder the situation.
Now, how about we take a little road trip and visit the many great thinkers who, before Mills and the sociological imagination, had their own concepts and theories of human social relations.
Section B, the sociological perspective and key contributors.
In order to help you get a serious grasp on sociology, we've decided to introduce you to some sociological geniuses. So how about joining us on this road trip through the intellect and visit 8 of the most influential minds in the field of sociology: Auguste Comte, Harriet Martineau, Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, George Herbert Mead, Talcott Parsons, and Robert K. Merton. So let's go.
Auguste Comte, a French dude, made his mark on sociology during the first half of the 18th century. Some say this gentleman founded the science of sociology. Well, almost. He actually just made up the word, sociology. Sociology.
Very innovative. The basis of Comte's sociological thought was his attempt to manage society through something called social engineering. Comte did a lot of things in this lifetime, including imagining a universal religion of humanity in which sociology supplied its dogma. In fact, he saw sociologists as the high priests of his imagined new social order.
Besides naming the science of sociology, he also advanced the idea of positivism.
Positivism is the belief that knowledge must be based on the facts rather than beliefs, opinions, or speculation. And then there's Harriet Martineau.
Martineau was, in fact, the woman responsible for translating the works of the just-mentioned Frenchman Comte. But that wasn't Martineau's only claim to fame. She was also the author of one of the first books written about sociological research methods, a topic we'll be discussing more later.
The next stop on our sociological journey is to the doorstep of one Karl Marx. Now, this is one influential man. In fact, he's the infamous founding father of communism.
Mr. Karl Marx is the founder of conflict theory and communism, concepts we'll be discussing quite soon. However, for your reference,
Conflict theory asserts that the organization of society and the changes in society can be explained by the conflicts inherent in many social relations.
Marx criticized capitalism for producing inequality. A According to Marx, capitalist societies are those that involve private ownership of tools and factories and that exploit works for the profit of owners. He said they produce social classes, which are arrangements that involve unequal positions based on income, wealth, and a person's place within a system of economics.
Marx argued that class conflict could only be overcome by abolishing private property and adopting communism. Communism is a system theorized by Marx as involving collective ownership of tools and factories. It would eliminate inequalities.
Marx said that there are two social classes, the capitalists and the proletarians.
Capitalists are people who own the factories within which the proletarians work. Capitalists are also the people who run the banks which own the deeds to the factories, and the merchants who sell the products made in the factories. The proletarians are the workers that make the products in the factory. They are the common people. So Marx theorized that there was a conflict between these two classes.
In regards to my conflict theory, there is a conflict between those who control production, the capitalists, and those who do not, the proletarians. This conflict leads to a struggle to end oppression. And take note, the oppression is of the proletarians who work for small wages and own no part of production. So with communism, I was really trying to make life better for the oppressed proletarian.
Communism is the collective ownership of the means of production, factories, tools, raw materials, etc. As a model of government, communism opposes private ownership.
The factories could then be owned collectively by the workers themselves, and things would be equal.
So in communism, classes are eliminated. People would cooperate in producing and distributing the things needed for living.
So, thanks to Marx, we understand that there is an inherent conflict between the haves and have-nots. That conflict is what fuels social relations. Speaking of social relations, you and your partner might have to work that out.
On with our sociology sojourn. Our next stop is the mind of Mr. Emil Durkheim, who gave sociology a plethora of new ideas and theories upon which to build. He was the question man.
Durkheim had a burning desire to know what held society together. So Durkheim became the individual who laid out the rules for researching human behavior and social relations. And he came up with the important idea of social facts and the notion that social groups can be understood through social facts. So what are social groups and social facts, you may wonder?
Social groups are collections of people who interact on the micro level, hold similar or related expectations about behaviors, and share a common identity.
Social facts are characteristics or properties of groups that are separate from individual members. Some good examples of social facts would be rates, such as crime rates, divorce rates, or rates of drug use. Other forms of social facts are levels of solidarity within a group and the shared expectations of a group. Social facts affect the behaviors of individual members of groups.
And what the heck does that mean? Well, you can think of it as kind of being like peer pressure that influences the way people act. For example, kids often behave differently with their friends than with their parents. Their behavior with their friends would be the social fact.
Now, say you've got this really sweet friend who works at Liquid Smog, the coolest coffee house on this side of the East Coast. She and you are inseparable because you get along so well. But one day you visit her at Smog and find out she acts completely different in front of her coworkers. In fact, she does a total 180 on you and acts just like her coworkers, standoffish and monumentally conceited. Well, with reason, of course. Everyone knows that Smog is the slammingest place to work. But hot or not, how she's acting in this environment is just completely uncool. Why is she acting this way?
Well, let's look at the social facts. First, your buddy is a member of a social group that enjoys respect. Second, group relationships are strong and exclusive. And third, there are group expectations about how to treat outsiders. The result is that your buddy acts toward you based on membership in the group rather than in terms of your friendship. Notice that social facts aren't characteristic of individual members, but of the group. Group respect, group relationships, and group expectations. Durkheim called these emergent properties. They arise from people's relationships and interactions.
Emergent properties are characteristics or traits of groups that result from interaction among people over time. These properties influence the behaviors of group members.
So, the emergent properties of your cool caffeine-dealing pal's group that affect her are elitism and group solidarity. Your friend is not necessarily an elitist, but when she is in this group, Her behavior is influenced by these group members.
Basically, what Durkheim is trying to illustrate is that different circumstances influence our behavior. And that brings us to the concept of social structure.
A social structure can be considered the skeleton of human relations. This structure is made up of the relatively predictable patterns of behavior and social relationships. These regularities make up the social structure.
Remember, the group characteristics of elitism and solidarity were called emergent properties. The properties produce results that can be seen in the behavior of members. Your Java pal's unfriendly attitude, for example. These are called structural effects.
And what are structural effects? And what do they have to do with your smog buddy? Okay, these structural effects are variations in human behavior and relationships that result from social facts rather than from individual characteristics such as personality. They're the different ways one acts that can be explained by one's surroundings instead of by the individual.
So the behaviors, like snottiness, are the structural effects of the social facts. Those social facts, elitism, and social solidarity are the emergent properties of the group of liquid smog workers. Your friend's attitude change is the structural effect of circumstances. And the main circumstance is that she belongs to a group with pompous ideas about working for a hotshot coffee house.
Mr. Durkheim gave us one other major conception in regards to studying groups. We'll consider the special emergent property of groups, social solidarity.
Social solidarity refers to the strength of the link that connects individuals within a group. Durkheim theorized that there are two types of this solidarity: mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity.
The first type of solidarity, mechanical solidarity, links together people through similarities of beliefs, positions, and behaviors, or a collective consciousness. This collective consciousness is what is formed when several people maintain strong social ties and hold the same beliefs based on similar individual characteristics. For example, a small rural farming community would be an example of a strong mechanical solidarity.
Groups characterized by this type of solidarity all tend to think the same about lots of things, like events, politics, values, languages, and dialects. These common characteristics bring them together.
Organic solidarity.
The second type of solidarity is called organic solidarity. Durkheim believed that this was more prevalent in modern societies. Basically, this type of solidarity calls for people to be united, not based on similar beliefs, but on interdependence.
Organic solidarity is the linking of a social structure through differences and functional interdependence. Each part of the social structure needs all the other parts to give one another meaning.
This is kind of like how the organs of a living organism work, hence organic solidarity. Each part does its own thing.
And analogous to this concept, each member of a social group plays a particular role in making that group work. Think about the individuals that work on a factory floor assembly line making thingamabobs. Each person contributes to the purpose of the group, the making of thingamabobs. Without everyone doing his part, the thingamabobs would be incomplete. While each person does a different job, each is important to the thingamabob's production. However, each person may be different. They may have different interests, likes, and dislikes. In fact, these people on the assembly line may even hate each other's guts. But that doesn't matter, because each worker still needs the other to complete the thingamabobs. They're interdependent.
Another example may be a sports team. Each person plays a different position, and each position counts towards the end goal of winning. But unlike mechanical solidarity, that doesn't mean that they all share the same beliefs.
Before we cover the last four major sociologists, let's review what we've learned from the first four. We've already discussed Auguste Comte, Harriet Martineau, Karl Marx, and Emile Durkheim.
Auguste Comte, the French guy, proposed to manage society through something he called social engineering. Comte also gave us the concept of positivism, the belief that knowledge should be guided by facts instead of imagination or speculation.
Harriet Martineau is the woman responsible for translating Comte's works. Martineau also authored one of the first books written about sociological research methods.
Karl Marx is the founding father of communism. Communism is a system which attempts to eliminate private ownership of factories and other means of production. Marx states that capitalist societies breed social classes, while communism would lead us to a class-free society.
Social classes refer to unequal social positions based on income, wealth, and a person's place within the society. Marx asserts that there are two social classes, capitalist and proletarians.
Emil Durkheim devised several rules for researching social reality, and he established the practice of studying social reality by examining social facts and social groups. He proposed various concepts for understanding the study of social groups, such as social facts, emergent properties, and mechanical and organic solidarity.
Max Weber put his best sociological foot forward during his time spent in the field of sociology when he sought to advance three big new claims. First, he made the claim that direct knowledge of pure fact is not possible.
What? That our buddy Auguste Comte says that knowledge should be guided by fact. Now Max Weber is telling us that knowledge of pure fact is not possible? What's the deal?
The deal is that social reality includes elements of both objective or factual reality